It could be. Now, and I've had it happen, we had it happen here.
Yeah, well,
Oh, this embellished the story of my crash landing on Green Island. So, but about 2 years ago, one of our reunions Bob brought a magazine. I didn't attend the reunion. Brought the magazine, Navy Wings of Gold. Yeah. Navy Wings of Gold, and it had a picture of the plane that I brought back with me standing by it, bureau number of the plane and everything, and it was identified as one of the first color photographs of World War II that had come out. And I have that honor of providing that picture.
Providing the material for the picture.
Yeah. Posed for it, but that's the end of it. I mean, that's.
You know, one of the things that I see in the pictures a lot is a picture of dogs. And it seemed like you had a dog just about wherever you went. I mean, how did that happen? Did you just pick him up along the way, or?
Rash had the one on. He had a Japanese war dog that had been shot up, and he nursed it back down. Peter had a Great Dane that he bought in Sydney, didn't you?
Pete Drury had lost his buddy on Green Island, Brownie. I had lost my buddy. Everybody joined up, you know, everybody kind of buddied up. And I had a guy named Tad Gage because he was the only other married guy in the squadron. And I wasn't, so the two of us got close together. And he was killed. So Pete and I were without buddies. So when we go to Australia for our first R&R, Pete said to me that he and Brownie had planned to pick up a Great Dane in Sydney because they were famous for being marvelous dogs. And I'm a strange person. I love dogs, inordinately so. I said, I'm your guy. So while we were there, we went and we bought a Great Dane puppy whose mother was grand champion of Australia, and they don't clip their ears there or their tails, so they have floppy ears like a hound. And she was gorgeous, Lady Duff, and brought her back to Espiritu, and I think it was a quart of liquor a month that was my ration, went to the mess sergeant, and Duffy ate better than we did. That dog got meat and good stuff. And there's an interesting, you want to hear this story? Duffy grew and grew. She could get now our cots in the little Dallas huts they were. You remember? Yeah. Those green things? They're about this high. Duffy grew so much that she would sit on the cot with her front paws this way, but her bumps on the cot. Well, and she was a joy. One day she could not eat. And she just didn't. She didn't complain or anything, and finally she just lay down. And this went on for 2 or 3 days, and this big, growing dog is getting skinnier and skinnier and doing nothing. And I go to the squadron doctor, and I say, you got to do something about my dog. She's dying. And he comes over. I'm not a veterinarian. I can't handle this. But there is a veterinarian, so we commandeer a Jeep, pick Duffy up, and take her to the veterinarian. Veterinarian says there is no distemper, there's no this, that, or anything on the island. There's nothing I can do. I bring her back. She still lays there. Nothing. The dog's dying. And now I go to the squadron doctor with tears, and also with clutched on his tunic. You got to do something for my dog. You can't just.
Was this Reardon?
No, this was the other fellow.
Head bloom?
Yes.
Oh, let him touch you, though.
Well, now, he comes over. See, I have a little different view, Mr. Bennett, and he takes a razor out and he shaves her butt, and he gets something out of the bag, and he says, I don't know what this is. It just came out from the States. It's supposed to be quite good. And the next morning, Duffy is up like she's brand new, eating to beat hell. And I go to the doc and I said, what was that? He said, well, I don't know. It just says penicillin. And it was the first shot of penicillin administered in the squadron. And it did. True story, absolutely. And Duffy lived with us and grew until her head was about to be chopped off by the rotating props. And I found a Marine taking a bunch of mud Marines home and got him to take Duffy home. Back to San Francisco, wrote my dad, said, you got a dog. He was in Berkeley. And I picked her up after the war. Well, that's another whole story. Okay, enough.
Well, what about Suki? What happened with Suki?
Unfortunately, a female dog went through the camp area, and Suki followed her away and was run over by a Jeep, which is a moral for all of us.
So Suki was run over by a Jeep?
Yeah. But the dog, we had a lot of green uniforms, and the theory was that the Japs had green uniforms too, and the dog thought we were Japs, I guess. But she made up to us Marines.
Did you get across that it was a Japanese dog?
Sir.
Oh, I got two now.
It was a Japanese dog, but Rash
And
nursed that dog back to health.
Did that already been out?
No, it hasn't, but that dog would lay in their tent, and that dog knew when Rash was about to land, and he'd get up, not say a word to anybody, go down to the strip and be where Rash parked his plane. And hell, I couldn't tell which was Rash's plane unless I could see the numbers, but that dog knew. Dog went with him when he got in his plane and left, and dog was there when he got back.
So you found Rash found the dog in a cave?
It was a Japanese war dog, and it had been wounded. Shrapnel or something. It really took a lot of care. And Rash nursed it back to health, and it, and somebody took a marvelous picture. They put a cigarette in the dog's mouth and took a picture. Looked like a rake, a dissolute of a dog. But and he tolerated the rest of us, but he loved Rash.
Yeah. I saw several pictures. You talked about no days off, but I saw several pictures of you guys sunbathing down at the beach. And so somebody had enough time to kind of get some.
That was Midway.
Well,
this was on Peleliu.
later on in
I think this
Peleliu,
was on Peleliu.
later on they went to the beach. I didn't, but the day I got shot, I was taking a flight. Roderick said, all the guys are down at the beach. And I said, I've flown 3 times today. He said, well, they're all down at the beach. And it sounded like a summer resort. And I took the flight.
I think this was then, if it wasn't Midway, where they had those naked pictures of Conger and Bastion.
Oh, so those pictures are at Midway.
Those are at Midway. And then we had our Aquacade group at Espiritu Santos. You remember those where the bunch of idiots.
So tell us about the Aquacade story.
Oh, well, I did nothing to tell. We had not, we're in training there, and this was rear area. So we had time to.
It looked like they trained for the
Yeah. We did.
It was 500 miles from Guadalcanal.
Yeah.
And there was always a permanent front of weather between the two. Anybody that flew up to the canal had to fly through, 2 or 3 hours of weather
Have a little bad weather, yeah.
with no radio or anything like that. It was fun.
What was, the next question I'll ask is, what was your most memorable mission over Palau? So, Bill, why don't you start?
Well, gosh, the most memorable was the 4th of March when Cowboy got killed and the Admiral was going to end the war on a good, pretty Sunday and told us what we were going to do and that we were going to keep doing it as long as there was a single Japanese gun firing. And we walked out of that briefing tent, and the thing that threw me was the 1st squadron was to drop 1,000-pound bombs. The 2nd squadron was to drop depth charges. And then we were to come in, and the Admiral, who did the briefing himself, said, you'll be right on the deck, and the Japanese will have no idea you're anywhere near, and you'll pop over the ridge, and you'll drop napalm on the stunned people who are dazed from the effect of the depth charges. And you know, I'm thinking, I'm not a hydraulic engineer, but depth charges are for use underwater, and they're nothing but a big firecracker up above, on ground there, like a big M80. And we walked out, and Conger and I were walking behind Bass and Stout said, "Now, Bass, if they shoot down the first 4 planes, don't go on in just to prove you got guts. We'll find another way to do this." And that's just almost what happened. But those depth charges didn't do much of anything. Okay. And they had a line of fire on top of that ridge for us to fly through, and they broke it just as we approached it. They knew exactly where we were and when we were going to cross the ridge.
Memories. You're going to edit the hell out of this, right? All I remember, I don't remember depth charges or any of that. I remember sitting out in the sun and Cowboy saying, we're going to be 3 strikes that day. We're the first strike. We're napalm. We're going to come in from, we'll start way out to sea, dive from 8,000 feet, so we're going to beat hell right to the, pop up over, we got about 2 miles, and nail him with napalm. And he said, I've heard there's a, this I remember, there's a Japanese shrine right at the bottom. So one of you drop low and maybe catch one of them bending over and give him an asshole full of napalm. That was in the briefing, and I did it too, and I was the guy right behind Cowboy. I was his second section leader. And that's all I remember about it. I do remember looking up at, because I took my eye off to drop a little low and came up, and there's only one plane, and it's Danny. And I thought it had to be Cowboy, because we always felt Cowboy, nothing could touch him. You know, he did stuff and never got hit. And I came up to Danny, where's Cowboy? And we're shrugging at each other.
Nobody saw him go out?
No. Nobody saw him.
And we fly back, and the people who designed this, I must say, well, it's been said, Peleliu was a mistake, and it cost human life up the gazoo, and it should never have happened. It should not have happened. And this was another example.
And Cowboy had a premonition. He knew that he was going to get killed.
Did he? I did not.
He went
get
out the
that.
night before and got pretty drunk, which he did not do. Went to the torpedo squadron, lost all his money, went to the paymaster, got him up, drew $6,000, went back and lost that. And that's just not typical of Stout at all.
I never heard.
Well, it's true. Conger told me that. Wow. And, you know, he was a very brave man, but he knew that he wasn't going to make that up.
The thing that impressed me when we got back, we landed, and I remember there was a colonel, sort of a turkey neck. Of course, we're all turkey neck now. But he was thin, and I gather he was in on this silly plan to try and take out Battery Hill, for which there was no reason to do, because it wasn't doing anything. And when we came in, and they're debriefing, and Cowboy's not with us, and Conger's there, because he was not on the first strike.
No, Conger was.
No, he was not. He was in that briefing room, and I never saw a man jump out of a chair so fast in my life.
Well, I was flying with Conger. We were the second group in. We were behind Stout's 8 planes.
That can't, well, isn't that wild? No, undoubtedly, that is firm in your mind. I saw, we all came back after the first strike. There were 16 planes.
And Conger came over to us and said, we're not flying the second hop, we're looking for Cowboy.
I saw Cowboy get up, run out, jump in his plane alone, and went back, and he was gone for an hour looking for Cowboy. Conger.
Yeah, you said Cowboy.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all went and looked, and we didn't find him. Nobody went. We didn't know he was in the water, in the jungle.
No, didn't see it go. You must stop that.
I don't, what? What I remember about that is it took off when we got in our formation.
Yeah.
And we flew over Corsair, and all I could see was white puffs in front of me. And I said, do I have to fly into that? Of course we did.
Yeah.
and I escaped miraculously. Came back, and that's about all I can remember of it. But I did think about the European war at the time, where the B-29s or 27, whatever they were flying into this daily.
Daily, yeah.
And over Germany and so forth. So
Yeah, I'd rather have been where we were than
yeah,
the
but
bombers.
this was one time of case, and probably was unnecessary.
But don't tell him that.
No, I don't mention that.
I have to deal with.
I remember I was leading the last 4 planes, and Stout's 4 started down, and we were flying behind. Each 4 was flying behind the
There were
next 4.
16 planes, is that
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
All right.
So they started going down. Kind of a gradual. We weren't peeling off and dive bombing.
Oh, no,
No, we came over a thing and then went right on the deck.
There were
But
Stout's 4
in the
planes,
last-
and Bastion's
yeah.
4 planes, and Congress 4 planes. And
In my 4 planes.
yeah, and man, you saw the smoke when you approached the ridge. You knew you had to fly through that curtain. But when you popped over the ridge, you were looking at gun muzzles and flashes and
All coming at you.
Yeah, but wait a minute. The time, the last 4 planes, we went through there about 130 or 40 miles an hour. I don't know how
You mean you
fast.
slowed up?
Yeah. Well, no, it was just the way it happened.
we were going about as fast
We
as
didn't
you
come
could
up
go.
here and then push over and go straight down.
Oh, no.
We let down.
We had,
Like
my
that.
remembrance is it was like a bowling alley. You had
Yeah.
about 2 miles to go, and all that crap's coming at you, and there was no way to jink because those little islands were there.
I wouldn't swear to it, but I don't think we were more than 300 feet high when we
no,
crossed that
no.
ridge.
No.
So we weren't diving. You were going down, but it wasn't a dive.
They have Frank Sullivan jumped all over me. He was flying a section.
Yeah.
I said, "Don't worry about it, Frank. If we hadn't been going so slow, they'd probably shut us all down." But they were giving us too much lead.
I'll be there.
All I remember was everything was in front of me, and I had to fly into it.
You know, we've never
I wasn't
done this.
thinking
We've
about
never talked about that day together. That's strange. Why didn't we?
Sam, were you on that mission?
I don't know. I have a vague recollection of it. Val, was I in your outfit? I think so.
You'd
Look in
remember.
your log.
And yeah, I'd have to look
Yeah.
in the logbook. I have a vague mental picture of
Yeah.
the ridge, flying over it and dipping down, and all you see is winks, little
Yeah.
bursts of light, and otherwise just kind of. One of the things you get is you disassociate yourself from it. All of a sudden, it's just there's no emotion, no anything involved in it. You're not scared. You're not unscared. You're nothing. It's a mechanical operation, and you lock yourself out of it.
It's your training. You're
Yeah.
trained to
The
operate.
training takes over finally.
But what's so tough is you're flying at a certain interval from the man you're flying wing on. You've got to watch him. You've got to watch the target, and it's like a 3-ring circus. You're
were
trying to do
very,
a lot of
very busy.
yes, and you're very conscious of the volume of fire pointed at
Well,
you.
keeping busy helped a lot.
Yeah, keeping.
Keep your mind off what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't get scared at those kind of things because I was so busy doing stuff.
I was sorry that I couldn't fly the Corsair backwards. I'd like to.
Well, I know that you're through again.
Where'd you go
That we
again?
bumped over to come. They had guys in the water with radio communication all the way back to Battery Hill. They were saying, "Here they come." There was a guy in the water. They had designed the first 2 squadrons to get all the fire going up at those guys so we could come in and nail them without getting shot. We just peeked over that thing, and it was open. The whole thing was that.
Japanese were just never quite as dumb as we thought they were.
Yeah, you know the depth charges though. I remember those because we used those on Yap too. The purpose of those was to be such concussive. They blew up right on the surface, and they were simply concussion weapons. Which, if I recollect, was illegal.
Who
mean,
dropped
No,
that?
it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't illegal because it wasn't effective. It's like
well,
a big firecracker.
it was supposed to basically turn the gunners off. It put so much pressure, blast pressure on the gunners, they were not supposed to fire back. Of course, we didn't tell them that, so they didn't know, and they did
The
fire back.
admiral's major at the academy was not hydraulics and explosives
Yeah,
underwater
yeah.
because it was a waste of time to drop depth charges on ground.
I wonder where he got that theory.
It's his very own. He was so proud of his plan, and he just could almost dance around when he was briefing us. And he did the briefing himself.
I remember somewhere it was a long explanation of why it was depth charges. They were 55-pound, basically, drums.
It's a big M80. You know, M80s won't kill you. They'll hurt you. You'll feel them.
Well, we have one last question. Jennifer wants to ask a question. And so, Jennifer.
We've done some research. We listed some questions to ask you, and you guys have been filling us in an amazing way. We know that we haven't asked several questions that we haven't thought of. What's the question we haven't asked, and what's the answer to it?
What was the funniest thing that ever happened to you? Yeah.
What's the answer?
Well, I've got.
Well, my funniest thing was on going up to Yap, and us in the face of intense and accurate fire, really shooting up the airstrip and the artillery, the anti-aircraft placements that we could find, and having these B-24s come over and lay a beautiful bomb pattern, just perfect, except it was in the bay. They killed millions of fish. They must have fed the Japanese on Yap for months. That was funny.
Sal has another question for us.
Those results always come up, so forth. But my thoughts these days of the end result of World War II, of course, books have been written about it and so forth. But we lost some great, wonderful people in World War II. Bob Spain, Tellep, Westman, you can go on and on. And I just wonder what the world would be like if those great people were still here with us. Not just our squadron Marine Corps, but just throughout the war. That's my thoughts these days.
One of the funniest thoughts I had was Wally mentioned that we did our own mess gear, which was almost a sure invitation to dysentery. And we all had that problem. And it's homely and coarse to think about and talk about. But it was a problem every day, and especially if you had a 3-hour flight to Yap and back. A lot of our flights were less than an hour. We, you know, it took only 20 minutes to get to work as far as getting to where you were getting shot at. But I came back one day and was suffering pains. And couldn't wait to land, and we had a nice 6-holer about 100 yards from our tents. And the Seabees had blasted holes in the coral, which were foxholes because it was all coral. But they weren't all that deep. They were maybe 18 inches or so. And I was by myself for a change in this nice deluxe head, 6-holer, about as commodious as they got during the war. And I just happy that I made it in time, and I'm sitting there and the ammunition dump went up. And all of a sudden the sky is filled. And my first thought was that I was worse shape than I thought. And my second thought was, do I get up and run from my foxhole, which is 50 yards away, or do I just drop down where I know I'll be safe? And then a thought occurred to me that none of my friends would pick me up out of there and clean me up. They'd ask for a new pilot. They'd ask for a replacement. So I didn't do it. I just stayed there and took my chances.
I thought it might be, what have I done?
I have one on the humor of the enemy. I've seen this on magazines, or I've seen the story printed somewhere, no credit, but this did happen to me. One day off Green Island, the powers that be said, we want you to make a plane count. And I had a division at this time, and they said, well, what is that? What do you mean? Well, we want you to fly low and slow over an enemy airstrip, count the planes, and estimate which ones you think are in commission. I said, what? Okay. Now, maybe this had been going on for some while. I didn't know. I was a brand new division leader. So they told me which, I can't remember if it was Lacuna or which one, but I took my guys, and I didn't want to lose anybody ever. And I said, what we're going to do is we're going to start at 8,000 feet and put the sun behind us, and we're going to dive, and we're going to get in a line abreast, and we're going to dive on that sucker from there, and a full bore. And about a certain way, we're going to open all 6, we had 6 machine guns in each one, 50 calibers. All of us spread out, and I want you to, everybody open up at the same time and let her rip. Go down that strip, and if you get a chance, take a look and see if you see an airplane or what might be in commission. And we'll pull up on the other side and then do a little of this and go away. They're all for that, and we did this just exactly. And we come down, and you can imagine that's, what's 4 times 6? 24, 50 caliber machine guns is one hell of a hunk of lead coming. And we're going down, and nothing's happening. We can see it. Well, they have a wooden tower for their control tower for their aircraft. And as we're at a point where we can't really give a shot at the tower, a guy shot me a green light. I mean, it came right out.
You landed.
No, it was, to me, and up to that point, Japanese were ants. I knew nothing about Japanese. They were, and I didn't have anything in for them or, any of that. But here was a guy with us, he just said, psst.
That's all he had to see?
It's all yours, buddy. And we went on up, and I look back, and we're...
some division leaders that would have laughed.
We might have. But it changed the whole war for me. I mean, I thought, these guys are... What the hell? Anybody's got a sense of humor is a human being. Anyway, that's that.
Color figured into things. The color I remember is kind of purple. It was hotter than hell on Peleliu.
Yeah.
And your flight suits were kind of water resistant. And when you got in that cockpit, 125 or 30 degrees in the cockpit, and you sat there for a while, and then you taxied out and you flew, and then you came back and you sat some more, you were sitting in your own sweat.
It's why the Japanese didn't take prisoners. We didn't have deodorant in those days.
But what happens is you begin to get a fungus infection behind.
Oh, yeah.
And you go in and they paint you with gentian violet.
Purple.
So you could always tell who was suffering. All you had to do was walk in the shower. Surrounded by purple butts.
Well, that was on our faces,
I'm sorry.
too.
You brought
Yeah,
that
face too. Couldn't tell the difference.
You're probably right.
Any last remarks? I think we're going to close up. Val?
One of the things, of course, we always made fun of everything out there. It was a morale thing, I guess. But when somebody was shot down or was missing or something, the first thing we did was count his assets, what he had there, and spread it among his friends. And I thought that was quite interesting. I didn't get anything from this.
Mostly it's whiskey.
Yeah, mostly is whiskey. We had wakes.
But what do we call it? A fatality in the squadron was bad, but we accepted it.
Yeah.
It was accepted.
So many times there was no body or no service. He just didn't come back. He was in the ocean or in the jungle. And that's why Brownie's service meant a great deal to me. We took him to this beautiful shoreline spot and buried him with proper honors, and I hope Drury sent his folks pictures of it, but it was a beautiful service.
Our squadron was infinitesimal in the American war effort, so forth, but we lost great people. And you can imagine all the other people in the world. What would the world be like today if we had those, you know?
I think that's a great place to stop,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Unless,
Yeah.
Sam, you have one last remark.
Well, I was just thinking, Marines have said this at least from as long as I can remember. It was a lousy war, but it's the only one we had.
Well, and there's never going to be another,
Ah,
because
that's what
there
we said
can't be.
before.
Not for me.
There
Not
cannot
for
be.
you.
Not for us.
No, no, but there can't be.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, as a matter of fact, I think we'd be a lot greater.